It all happened because Derek, Officer Hustler, was late. It wasn't due to anything but good old bad luck, though that wouldn't stop many of them from grousing about it. The captain was one such individual, and Derek had been even later because he had to listen to him complain about it. It hadn't been something that he could have done anything about. He had been riding to work in his old pickup truck when a sudden bang had sent him skidding off the side of the road. Luckily, it had been a back tire, so it hadn't been too bad. He would have been about 30 minutes early, but when it was all said and done, he was 15 minutes late, and he had missed the briefing. He had called control so they could let the captain know, but by the look on his face, there had been no such message. "I expect you to be at briefing, Hustler. That's why we have a briefing. I like to let my staff know what they're looking forward to each night before they come in. If you don't think that's something you're going to be able to do, then by all means, I guess I can find someone who can." My apologies, Captain. I had a flat tire but Captain Worthy waved him off. "I'm not interested in whatever excuse you have for oversleeping. Don't let it happen again, or I'll find someone that can get here on time. Do we understand?" "Yes, sir," Derek said, internally thinking to himself that he'd be sure to plan out his next flat tire so that it was a little more convenient for the captain. "Now, despite your lateness, Sergeant Mobley has asked that you be placed in confinement tonight. I don't know how you impressed him, but he's asked for you specifically. Have you ever worked with Sergeant Mobley before?" "No, I had never even met him until the other night." The captain raised an eyebrow. "Well, he seems to have taken a shine to you. I would suggest that you be very careful about what you tell him and take everything he says with a grain of salt. Mobley has been here for about 30 years, but he spent the last 28 of those years on the Warden's shit list. I don't know what he did to get there, and quite frankly, I don't want to know. All I'm telling you is that if you intend to have a career here, then I would watch yourself very carefully and be careful what you let him talk you into. You can go now. They're already waiting for you." Derek headed off to G-Dorm, which was confinement. It sat behind a large, locked gate. It was as uninviting as one could expect. Derek supposed it was supposed to be, but it was pretty formidable even when you were supposed to be there. He had to go through the gate. One of the yard sergeants unlocked it for him when he started hearing a noise from the officer's station. It was something high-pitched and unpleasant, and the sergeant had cocked his head up, trying to hear it better. "Sounds like somebody's having a bad time," he said with a little chuckle. "Better get used to that. It's pretty much an all-day, every-day kind of thing." Derek rolled his eyes as he stepped inside, but as he got closer to the door, he couldn't help but notice that the screaming was getting louder. It wasn't coming from the floor like the sergeant had expected. The screaming was coming from the officer's station. Derek put on a burst of speed as he headed for the post, not quite sure what to expect. He came to the front door to find an officer he was unfamiliar with, trying to comfort Sergeant Mobley, who was on the floor and staring at someone sitting in a chair where he usually sat. One look at the guy made it pretty clear what Mobley's problem was. If Derek had come into a place and found someone like that, he would probably have lost his mind as well. The guy was clearly in a uniform, what was left of it at least, and he was awash with blood. He wasn't translucent. It wasn't like he was an apparition or anything, but he was somewhere between a zombie and a ghost. His body had been ripped apart, but it didn't seem to be hampering him as he went about his paperwork. He was leaving nothing behind either, so Derek wasn't sure what to make of any of this. "It can't be," Mobley kept mumbling again and again. "It can't be. It can't be. It just can't be." "Sarge, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost. What's going on?" Mobley just went right on repeating the same thing again and again, and Derek realized he was going to have no option but to call the captain and fill him in on what was going on. He looked at the other officer, he thought his name might be Daly, and asked him if he had called the captain's office yet. "Are you kidding me? I'm not going anywhere near that thing. I don't even know what it is, and it seems to be freaking Sarge out a lot. No, I'll stand right here until somebody comes in. I gotta keep this old guy from hurting himself." Derek looked at the apparition, and as he began stepping towards him, he wasn't really sure what was going to happen. If the ghost in the chair saw him, then he made no indication. He just kept doing paperwork, his pen scritching on the page, and when Derek reached for the phone, it was as if the thing had never even seen him. He dialed the captain's office, keeping a wary eye on the operation as he did so. "Don't tell me there's trouble already," the captain said as he picked up the phone. "Sir, you might want to come down here. Something's up with Sergeant Mobley." The captain sighed. Clearly, this wasn't the first time he'd had to deal with something like this. "If he's trying to use sick days, then he needs to go through the proper channels like everybody else. He knows that. I'm not... No, sir. He's having a fit or something. There's something weird down here. Something that was here when we got here, and it seems to be upsetting him a lot." The captain growled, and Derek could hear him sit forward in his chair. "All right, but this better be good." Derek didn't know if it was good or not, but the captain seemed impressed when he arrived. Derek didn't know what he was expecting, but it clearly wasn't what he found. He looked at the apparition as if he couldn't believe what he was seeing for a moment. "That can't be," the captain said. "What the hell is this?" "I don't know, sir. He was here when we got here, and Sergeant Mobley appears to be having a pretty bad time." "Yeah. Well, seeing something like that, I don't imagine he is." "What do we do?" The captain shook his head. "Not much we can do. We're going to have to..." But he was cut off as someone pushed the call button from out in the hall. Derek glanced out at the quad, not sure who would be pushing the quad button since they were all in here. And what he found was another of the ghostly people. This one was a stocky fellow, most of his face missing, and he was pushing the button like he wanted to take a nice long sit down before his next duties took him somewhere else. There was another ghostly guard beside him, this one a reedy man with half his skull looking to be smashed in by something. The two of them just stood there like they weren't a couple of ghouls trying to gain entry to a secure housing unit, and the captain was absolutely speechless. "Leave them out there," he said, as he glanced at the ghost before stepping over to the phone. "I gotta call this in." Derek didn't know who he was calling, but whoever was on the other end did not seem particularly pleased about being bothered. The captain told him what was going on, his usual crispness gone, as he was scolded by whoever was on the other end of the line. The two of them talked, and after about a minute, the captain thanked him and hung up the phone. "Hustler, have you ever met the Warden?" Derek shuddered. It was all the affirmation the captain needed. "Good. Then I shouldn't have to introduce you." Derek had only met the Warden of Stragview once, and it had been after his ill-advised trip to the laundry room. He had honestly hoped to go the rest of his career without having to be in the same room as the man ever again, but it seemed it wasn't to be. He was shaking a little at the thought of having to face the man again, and when somebody hit the call button on the outside of the confinement door, they all looked to see the meticulously kept Warden standing outside. They buzzed him in, and he came striding in as if Heads were about to roll. "All right, what's all the trouble? I swear, Captain, if you can't handle the shift, then I'll find somebody who—" He stopped as he saw the ghostly apparition. Derek had never heard of the Warden being caught off guard, but it appeared to be just what was happening. He stared at the man sitting in front of the computer, as if he was the last person he had ever expected to see. Clearly, this was not what the Warden had expected to find, and it was the last thing he'd expected to be called down to handle. "Sorry to disturb you, Warden, but when a ghost appears in the officer station, it seems like it might be a good idea to have you come down and have a look." The Warden just went right on staring at the man who was doing paperwork in front of the computer, and when he stepped towards him, Derek thought he might be getting ready to shake the guy and ask what the hell he thought he was doing. Instead, he picked up the phone and waited impatiently as it rang 3 times. Whoever was on the other end had a soft, feminine voice, and it did very little to dissuade the Warden in his anger. "I need you to come meet me in my office in 5 minutes so you can explain to me what the hell is going on in confinement." He hung up without giving them a chance to answer, before turning to the confinement team with what he must have hoped was a winning smile. "Nothing to worry about. All this is going to be sorted out very soon. Go about business as usual now, but I would advise you not to—" When Mobley stood up suddenly and grabbed him, it made everybody jump a little. Mobley had gone from being nearly catatonic to furious in the scope of about 5 seconds. He pushed the Warden against the console as he wrapped his hands around his throat, shaking him as he yelled into his face. Derek wouldn't have told you that such a thing was possible. He had never actually seen anyone try to accost the Warden before, but he thought Mobley was only allowed to do so because of how fully he had caught him off guard. "You son of a bitch! You goddamn son of a bitch! How could you do such a thing? They were my friends, and now you've done this to them. If I had the strength in my body to do so, I'd kill you right now. It's what you deserve. It's what you—" But that was about the time the Warden's surprise wore off. He raised his hands and knocked Mobley's shaky fingers aside with the greatest of ease. He pushed the man back, and now it was Mobley's turn to hit the console hard enough to make it rattle. He stared at him with a look of such intense hatred that Derek felt a little embarrassed to be witnessing it. The Warden's eyes were so callous and full of disdain that it seemed like a man ought to burst into flames if he stood in it for too long. "Captain Worthy, I want this man escorted out of the prison. He is suspended indefinitely for assault on staff. Inform him that if he should ever step foot on the premises again, he will be arrested and will likely end up in federal prison." The captain had barely taken his first shaky step towards the old sergeant when the Warden stepped in close to deliver a declaration of his own. "And if I ever see you again, you won't have to worry about going to prison. I'll put you in the ground myself." He walked out then, and Captain Worthy was left with nothing else to do but place Sergeant Mobley under indefinite suspension and walk him off the compound. Officer Daly and Officer Derek were left standing in the officer station with the busily typing entity, neither of them sure what to do after all that. "I want a full explanation about why that thing is in the officer station." Miss Evergreen smiled at the Warden as she adjusted her skirts. "I do apologize, Warden. It appears there was a mix-up in the scheduling. I was certain you told me you wanted the new staff ready by the 21st. The Warden gritted his teeth and drummed his fingers on the table. No, I said the 1st of October. This isn't how I expected this to go. Now we have angry staff who know what we plan to do. This isn't good. If they decide to ask questions, it's going to lead to a lot of awkward talk. Miss Evergreen shrugged. It was bound to happen eventually. They were going to find out. This just means we can push forward. We can go ahead and get the new officers in the dorms by tomorrow. If that's what you want, she added hastily. The warden looked shocked. Could they be ready by tomorrow? Miss Evergreen smiled icily. They could be ready right now, if you wanted them to be. The warden's smile matched hers perfectly. Then let's go ahead and do it tonight. Miss Evergreen looked like she might start to giggle. Tonight? Are you absolutely sure? Why not? The warden said, as he spread his hands wide across the tabletop. If we can be fully staffed right this minute, then why shouldn't we? Let's go ahead and get it all underway so that they can go ahead and complain about it and be done with it. Calls to the captain's office began about an hour before master roster count. The calls were all the same, too. People coming into their dorms, strange people, all of them silent, all of them hard-working. They were coming in and doing the jobs the officers had done until a few minutes before. They were scaring the inmates, they were causing an uproar, and all of them wanted to know why this was happening. The captain didn't know. The captain had heard nothing about this, and when he called the warden told him to assemble his crew under the tower, and that he would address them. The captain wasn't sure how this was going to shake out, and as he called his crew and told them to be under the captain's tower for an assembly, they all asked the same question. Should we just abandon our dorms? The captain answered the questions in the same way the warden had. They aren't abandoned. We're fully staffed now, and will be for the foreseeable future. The small group of regular people who still worked for Stragview assembled under the warden's tower, and he came out like some kind of emperor to address them and their growing concerns. Assistant Warden Strauss was with him, as was Miss Evergreen, and the two of them sat on either side of him, as if they were there to guide or to tempt him. Miss Evergreen was all smiles as she looked down at the assembled people, but Assistant Warden Strauss looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. As for the warden, you could have seen his smile from a mile away. Thank you for coming to this meeting. I understand that many of you have concerns about the new staff. Let me assure you, none of you will be fired to make room for them. They will work here, just as we do, and they will probably work even harder than we do. I have discovered a means to create a workforce in the face of our staff shortage, and you are now seeing the fruits of that labor. I know there will be some growing pains, some transitions, but rest assured they're not dangerous, and they mean you no harm. They serve Stragview, just as you do, and they're here to help us. What are they? Someone yelled, and the warden couldn't be sure who it was in the poor lighting. It would have probably been Mobley if he hadn't gotten rid of that old man right off. As many of you know, Stragview has a long and often bloody history. These new recruits are the spirits, the byproduct of that history. They are the unfortunate aftermath of such a history as ours. But, as I said, they will offer you no harm, and should not be feared or treated any differently than you would treat anyone else. Are they ghosts? Someone else yelled. The warden started to answer, but Miss Evergreen put a hand on his shoulder and stepped forward. They are. Many of them have been here for decades, and they only wish to help. They do not wish anyone ill will. They only want to be of service. Many of them are people that you've known. Many of them are people that you once worked with. They do not want to do you any harm. They only want to serve." "And what if we choose not to work with them?" someone else asked. That was Officer Hustler. The warden was sure of it. The boy had shaken off a lot of the fear and trepidation that he'd had when he'd seen him in the dorm, and the look on his face was now something he didn't much care for. It looked an awful lot like defiance, and Stragview had never been a place for defiance. And why would you choose such a thing? I saw the way Sergeant Mobley looked at them. He was afraid. He knew them. And it isn't right what you're doing here. This isn't something that we should condone. This isn't something that anyone should condone. We need to..." But the warden cut him off before he could get going. "What you need to do is return to your post if you continue being paid. Look around you. We don't need you anymore. I have filled every shift overnight, and your continued presence here is not overly necessary. These apparitions do not eat, they do not sleep, and they do not complain ceaselessly about benefits or pay increases or birthdays or funerals or any of the other myriad things that I have to field on a daily basis. Those who will not work with our new workforce will be replaced, and quickly. Before you walk out, I would think very hard about your decision." "Before you stay," Officer Hustler said, "I'd think very hard about what's going on here. Look around you. What's to stop him from putting us to work if he doesn't think we're working hard enough? We've seen what he does. We've seen him make other people disappear. What's to stop him from making us go away so that our corpses can work harder for him? I, for one, don't need to pay bills that badly. I'll go find work elsewhere." The warden rolled his eyes as Officer Hustler started walking towards the front gate. But when others began to join him, it was a little more serious. It wasn't just a few, either. At first, it was half of those assembled, then a third. Before long, even Captain Worthy was leaving. He knew it would be the same with the other shifts. Some of them would stay, but it wouldn't be many. He thought perhaps 90% of them would leave in the end, and he supposed he should have expected that. Officer Hustler had been right to expect him to ratchet up the workload. Anyone who fell from now on would join the workforce, whether they wanted to or not. But he had enough workers to work 8 different shifts. He hadn't been lying when he said he didn't need them anymore, and now it was up to them to realize that. "This is getting out of hand," Assistant Warden Strauss said as they went back into the tower. "Who is going to man the shift if everyone leaves?" "The same people who are manning it now," Miss Evergreen said. "This is not a setback. This is what we wanted. Now we don't have to pay any of them. We don't have to feed anyone except the inmates, and any of them who get out of line will quickly find out how potent our new workforce is. They do not tire, they do not sleep, they do not complain, and they do not eat. We can utilize them indefinitely and cut the budget of Stragview into pieces. Yours will be the most efficient prison in the country, and soon others will wish to know how we do these things." Assistant Warden Strauss turned to the warden, trying one more desperate ploy. "Sir, you have to stop them. Tell them we'll transition. Tell them we'll integrate them slowly. We need real people here, too. We need the outside world to see that we're still of benefit to the community. If the town finds out that we fired everyone, how is that going to look?" The warden mulled that over for a moment, but it didn't seem to have the weight that Strauss had clearly hoped it would. "So long as the inmates are being taken care of, I don't see what anyone has to be upset about. We're doing the job we were put here to do. I think that's all the public really cares about in the end." Strauss looked over at Miss Evergreen and seemed to realize that this had been her plan all along. She'd been attempting to isolate the warden and slowly take over the prison from the very start. It was a cunning plan, and it appeared that now it had worked. The employees were gone. Many of the members of management would follow them, and then it would be just her, the warden, and a prison full of ghosts. "I implore you not to do this. This woman has ulterior motives. I don't know how you can't see it. She is planning something, and I have fear that she does not have your best interests in mind, or the interests of this prison. Who will defend the prison if this enemy of yours in the forest decides to come pay a visit? Will the ghosts fight for you? Will anyone fight for you? I'm not asking as your employee. I'm asking as your friend. Please reconsider this." The warden raised an eyebrow as he looked at Strauss, clearly not liking the line of questioning. "If you intend to leave as well, then why don't you go ahead and do it? There's no room for second guessers here. If you're not on board with our new change, then I'd suggest you go elsewhere." Strauss stared at him for a moment, waiting for him to take it back. But as the silence stretched on, he nodded and walked from the room. He paused at the door, looking back at the warden with pity as he delivered his final words on the matter. "This is a mistake, and I hope it's one that you live to regret." Then he left, and the warden was indeed left all alone with his ghosts and his choices. As he starts walking away, Bobby asks him if he wants her to invite him to the Sadie Hawkins dance, and Peter says he isn't really sure. He supposes that would be fine, but we get the feeling that Peter wants someone else to invite him to the dance. Bobby says he's going to ask Jenny Miller to ask him to the dance, and Peter asks if that defeats the purpose of the Sadie Hawkins dance if you ask the girl to ask you. Bobby shrugs and says he doesn't know or care. He just doesn't want to be the only guy not invited. Bobby says he really doesn't care one way or another, and that he's sure that Jenny will say yes if he asks. The two make some small talk as they walk towards Peter's house, typical friend banter, and as we get to Bobby's house, they say their goodbyes, and Peter leaves to walk the rest of the way by himself.
Good evening, everyone. It's me, Dr. Plague. Thank you so much for joining us for tonight's show. If you think you might like a little more spooky in your life, then please feel free to click on one of the videos we have up here. Maybe look at one of the playlists if you're trying to get caught up. I know, there's so many videos on the channel. There's so many series that are going at the same time. Sometimes you just need a little refresher course, and I gotta say, I always enjoy the views. If you're not subscribed, feel free to hit that subscribe button. Maybe hit the bell so you don't miss anything. We upload a lot on this channel, so you won't want to miss a single story as they come out. If you'd like to support the channel, you can click on the Amazon link down there. There's quite a few books in my Amazon account. You can have a look, and if you'd like a signed copy, get up with me through email, and I'll be happy to work something out with you. Also, there's links to my Patreon, and you can become a member on the channel if you'd like your spooky a little bit early. Patrons and members on the $5 tier get their videos 12 hours early. That's in the morning as opposed to in the evening. Patrons at the $10 level also get a signed copy of my book anytime I write one. Speaking of my patrons, you should see them appearing right now. Just wanted to take a minute to say how much I appreciate all of you. Patrons, subscribers, however you give to the channel. I really appreciate everything you do, and it truly touches me that you have chosen to support the channel in this way. Well, that's enough for now. Till next time, Dr. Plague, signing off. Have a wonderful evening.